In the busy city of Ibadan, Nigeria, Tund was a young man everyone thought had his life together. By day, he worked as an office clerk, typing documents and running errands. By night, he changed into his delivery rider uniform, rushing through the noisy streets, carrying food orders until his body ached. People around him believed he was doing well, but no one knew the truth he hid. Every naira Tund earned had a purpose. He was paying off his credit card debt piece by piece, dreaming of the day he could finally start his own small business. That dream kept him going. But to save money, he often skipped meals, walked long distances instead of paying for transport, and lived in a tiny apartment that barely fit his bed. When his friends invited him out, he smiled and made excuses, never telling them he simply couldn't afford it. At home, his family praised him. They told neighbors, "Tund is hardworking, Tund is doing well." And Tund, with a tired smile, let them believe it. He never mentioned how many nights he went to bed hungry, or how his hands shook with exhaustion after long shifts. To them, he was strong, dependable, the son who never complained. But inside, he carried a heavy burden, fighting quietly every single day, holding on to hope that one day all this sacrifice would be worth it. Nobody saw the hidden struggle. Nobody knew the real price he was paying. Amara was the shining star of the family. She was Tund's younger sister, the one everyone called Princess. She studied art in Lagos, and her parents spoiled her in every way possible. If she wanted money for new clothes, they gave it. If she wanted the latest phone, they found a way to buy it. When she spoke about traveling or attending expensive art shows, her parents would nod and say, "Of course, Amara deserves it." To them, she was special, different from the rest. Tund noticed the difference every single day. When he asked for help, even with something small, the answer was always, "You're a man, you'll manage." It was as if his struggles didn't matter, as if his hard work was just expected and nothing more. Their mother would often brag to relatives, "Amara is destined for greatness. She is talented. She will make us proud." But when it came to Tund, all he heard was, "Be strong. Take care of yourself. Sacrifice." The favoritism ate at him quietly. He never wanted to hate his sister, and deep inside he loved her. But the way his parents treated her like royalty while treating him like a servant cut deep. There were times he watched Amara showing off a new dress or talking about her next big trip while he sat silently, counting every naira in his pocket to see if he had enough for food that week. The unfairness burned inside him, but he swallowed his words. Whenever relatives came over, Amara was the one in the spotlight. She would display her artwork, and everyone clapped and praised her talent. Tund would sit in the corner, tired from working 2 jobs, and no one asked him how he was managing. No one cared about the endless nights he stayed awake, planning and saving for his future. To his parents, Tund was just the strong one, the son who would never break no matter how much weight they piled on his shoulders. There were moments he wanted to scream, to tell them how much it hurt, but he stayed silent. He didn't want to create conflict. He didn't want to be seen as jealous. So he forced a smile, clapped for Amara like everyone else, and told himself, "One day they will see my worth." But deep inside, he carried the heavy truth. His family's love wasn't equal. To them, Amara was the golden child, while he was just the backbone holding everything together. And though he never showed it, each word of praise for Amara and each dismissal of his own sacrifices slowly chipped away at his heart. He was a brother in the shadows, watching the princess shine while he struggled. In silence, Tund came home late one evening, his legs aching after a long day of running deliveries. He dropped his bag on the chair, pulled out his phone, and almost dropped it when he saw the screen light up with messages. One after another, credit card alerts. Huge amounts of money, hundreds then thousands, gone in minutes. His heart started to race. The alerts showed transactions in foreign currency. Dollars, euros. His mind spun. He hadn't traveled anywhere. He hadn't even bought anything big. How could this be? He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the screen as if maybe the numbers would change. Maybe it was a mistake. His throat went dry. He scrolled through the messages again, his hands shaking. Each alert cut into him like a knife. These weren't small charges. Whoever did this had taken a massive amount. He whispered to himself, "No, this can't be real." It can't. But the phone didn't lie. The next morning, with barely any sleep, Tund rushed to the bank. His chest felt heavy the whole way, as if he was carrying bricks. When his number was called, he sat across from the bank officer and explained everything. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice low but desperate. The officer typed into the computer, checked the system, and finally looked at him calmly, almost coldly. "Sir, the transactions were approved from your account. They are valid." Tund's eyes widened. "What do you mean approved? I didn't approve anything. I don't even know these places." But the man only shrugged. "Someone with access to your account made these transactions. They had your details. It wasn't denied because it came from a recognized device." The words hit him like thunder. Someone close to him had his card information. Someone he trusted. He left the bank with his head spinning, the weight of the debt crushing his chest. Who could have done this? His parents? His sister? Friend? The thought made him feel sick. He had worked so hard, saved every coin, skipped meals, taken night jobs. And now, in a matter of hours, everything was gone. That night, he lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. His phone lay beside him, still showing the alerts. His mind raced with questions. Why me? Who would do this? Why would someone I love betray me like this? He wanted to believe it was some random fraud, a hacker from far away, but deep down he knew the truth. Only someone close enough could pull this off. As the room grew darker, his chest tightened with fear and anger. The money wasn't just money. It was his sweat, his sacrifices, his future. And now it was gone. He closed his eyes, but sleep refused to come. For the first time in his life, Tund felt that his biggest enemy wasn't outside in the world. It was someone inside his own circle. For days, Tund could not rest. His mind refused to accept what had happened. Every free moment, he tried to piece the puzzle together, checking his bank records, asking quiet questions, retracing who might have had access to his details. The truth came slowly, like poison spreading through his veins. And then one evening it hit him with full force. His own parents. The very people who had taught him about honesty, respect, and sacrifice. They were the ones who had secretly used his credit card. It wasn't just a little money. It wasn't a mistake. It was $15,500. Money he didn't even own. Money borrowed against his future. Money that chained him in debt before he even had a chance to stand free. And what for? Not for food, not for survival, not for an emergency. But for Amara. For her so-called dream Europe trip. His sister was posting smiling photos from Paris and Rome while he was breaking his back every day, saving every naira, eating dry bread for dinner. Tund sat in his small room, the bank statement shaking in his hands. His chest felt tight, his breath uneven. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. These were his parents. The same people who once scolded him if he took an extra piece of meat at dinner without asking. The same parents who told him, "Always be honest, never steal." And yet they had stolen from him, their own son. Memories flashed in his mind. His father saying, "You're the man of the house now, be strong." His mother proudly telling neighbors that Amara was destined for greatness. All those words now felt like knives. They hadn't just favored Amara. They had sacrificed him for her. They had taken his sweat, his sacrifices, his dreams, and handed them to her like a gift wrapped in betrayal. Tund dropped the papers on the table and buried his face in his hands. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" he whispered into the silence. The walls around him seemed to close in, heavy with secrets he never thought his family was capable of. He wanted to scream, to cry, to tear down the lies he had lived under. But all that came out was silence. For the first time in his life, Tund felt like a stranger in his own family. The trust that held them together had shattered completely. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about respect, about love, about dignity. And that night, as he sat in the darkness of his room, one thought kept echoing in his head. If my own parents can betray me like this, then who in this world can I ever trust? That night, Tund sat in his small apartment, the kind of place where every sound echoed against the thin walls. In front of him lay the debt statement, the numbers staring back like a cruel reminder of everything he had lost. His chest tightened so much it felt hard to breathe. He pressed his hands against his face, but it did nothing to stop the wave of pain rushing through him. Anger burned inside him, yes, but beneath that fire was something far heavier, hurt. Am I just an ATM to them? He whispered to himself, his voice breaking. Does my sweat mean nothing to my own family? The thought stung worse than the debt itself. Money could be replaced, but trust, that was gone. His mind began to replay the nights of sacrifice. Nights when he came home with his back aching from carrying heavy loads just to earn a little extra. Days when he skipped meals, telling himself, "It's fine, I'll eat tomorrow," just so he could save a few more naira. He remembered walking miles under the hot sun because he didn't want to waste money on transport. All of it, every sacrifice, every tear swallowed in silence, wiped away in one selfish act by the very people he loved most. Tund leaned back on the chair, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Memories of his parents' words echoed in his head. Be strong, you're the man. Don't complain, just work harder. They always pushed him to sacrifice more, give more, carry more. But for what? For them to take it all away without shame. The worst part was knowing they hadn't even asked. They hadn't trusted him enough to come to him as a son to say, "Tund, can you help?"
No.
They went behind his back, treated him like a bank account, and then handed over his sweat-soaked savings to Amara as if it meant nothing. He thought about Amara laughing in Europe, posing for pictures, while he sat here drowning in debt. She didn't feel the weight of his sleepless nights. She didn't feel the hunger that twisted his stomach. She didn't feel the exhaustion of running from one job to another. She was living a dream, but the cost of that dream was his nightmare. Tund's fists clenched. His whole body trembled as the questions tore at his heart. Do they even love me? Or do they only love what I provide? Am I their son or just their sacrifice? Tears welled in his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. He felt broken, betrayed, and invisible. That night, Tund learned a cruel truth. Sometimes the deepest wounds are not caused by enemies, but by the very people who are supposed to protect you. And as he sat there, surrounded by silence and the crushing weight of betrayal, one thing became clear. He would never look at his family the same way again. Tund could not carry the weight anymore. His chest felt like it would explode if he stayed silent one more day. So, one evening, he marched straight into the family house in Ibadan, his heart pounding like a drum. The living room was full, his parents were seated, and Amara was flipping through her phone with a smile on her face. Without a word, Tund pulled the debt statement from his bag and slammed it hard on the table. The sound echoed through the room. His voice trembled, but the anger inside gave it strength. You took $15,500 from me, without asking. Do you even know what that means for my life? For my future? The room fell into a heavy silence. His father shifted uncomfortably and looked away, avoiding his son's eyes. His mother pressed her lips together, then finally spoke, her tone calm but sharp. Tund, you don't understand. It was for Amara's future. She deserves opportunities you never had. We couldn't let her miss this chance. Tund stared at her in disbelief. Her future. And what about mine? What about the nights I went hungry just to save? What about the years I worked 2 jobs, breaking my body trying to stay afloat? Does none of that matter to you? His voice cracked, and the pain inside him spilled into every word. Before his mother could answer, Amara stood tall, her arms folded across her chest, her chin lifted with pride. You'll recover, Tund. You're strong. You always manage. This is nothing to you compared to what it means for me. Those words hit harder than any slap. Tund's body shook as he tried to hold himself together. Nothing to me, he repeated, his voice low and broken. Do you know what it feels like to see your whole life, your sweat, your blood, handed over like a gift while I'm left with debt that could destroy me? Do you even see me, Amara? Do any of you see me? The relatives in the corner, who had been quiet until now, exchanged uneasy looks. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Tund turned to his father, desperate for a word of support, but all he saw was guilt written across his face. His father lowered his head and whispered, "We thought you'd manage." Manage. That word echoed in Tund's ears like thunder. For years, they had used it to push aside his struggles, to dismiss his pain, to dump responsibilities on him while they poured all their love and resources into Amara. Now, even after stealing from him, that same word was thrown at him again. Tun's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. You didn't just take money from me. You took my trust. You took my dignity. And maybe, you took the last piece of love I had left for this family. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. In that moment, the golden image of family that Tund had clung to all his life shattered into pieces, right there in the middle of the room. Tund could no longer hold back. His whole body shook as the fire inside him finally broke free. His eyes were wet, his fists tight, and his voice carried the weight of years of pain. "Strong!" he shouted, his words trembling. "Do you know how many nights I slept hungry just so I could save? Do you know how many debts I already carry on my back, debts that crush me every single day? And you, my own family, the people I trusted most, you stabbed me in the back." The room went still. His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. Every word came out raw, from a place so deep that no one could ignore it. "You think because I don't complain I don't feel pain. You think because I stay quiet I'm not bleeding inside. I worked myself to the bone for years, and all you saw was someone to use. Someone who would always manage." His mother tried to reach out, whispering, "Tund, calm down," but he pulled away, his eyes burning with hurt. "Calm down. How can I calm down when my whole future has been stolen by the very people who should protect me? You raised me to believe in honesty, but you taught me betrayal. You told me family means love, but all I see is selfishness. Tell me, what am I to you? A son, or just your sacrifice?" Relatives sitting in the corner, who had been silent observers until now, shifted uncomfortably. For the first time they didn't see Tund as just a quiet, hard-working son. They saw a man completely broken, his heart ripped apart by the people he loved most. His pain filled the air, thick and undeniable. Amara, still standing proudly, rolled her eyes, but even her confidence faltered under the weight of his words. Neighbors who had always admired the family's unity now looked away, ashamed by the truth spilling out. The golden picture of perfect parents and the golden daughter was cracking before everyone's eyes. Tund's voice lowered, heavy with exhaustion. "Do you know what it feels like to give everything and be left with nothing? To love with your whole heart and be treated like a stranger? I thought I was building a future, but now I see. I was only building comfort for others while destroying myself." He turned his face upward, as if fighting back tears that threatened to fall. His chest rose and fell quickly, his anger and hurt tangled into one storm. And then he said the words that silenced the whole room. "Tonight, I bury the son who trusted you. What's left of me now is not yours anymore." No one dared to move. No one dared to speak. For the first time, the family saw the truth. They had broken him, and the man standing before them was no longer just their son. He was a soul crushed by betrayal, but also a fire that would never burn the same again. The story of what happened in Tund's family did not stay inside the four walls of their house. In Ibadan, news traveled fast. Within days, neighbors were whispering, relatives were calling, and everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some shook their heads in pity, while others shook them in anger. To some, Tund was a disgrace for shouting at his parents and exposing their secrets. "No matter what they did, they are still your parents," one uncle muttered. "You embarrassed them in front of everyone." But others saw things differently. They saw the pain in Tund's eyes, the truth in his words, and the injustice of what had been done to him. His cousin Gozi, who had always admired his quiet strength, pulled him aside one evening. Her voice was low, but her words were sharp with sincerity. "Don't let them crush you, Tund. You deserve better than this. You've carried this family for too long. Now it's time to carry yourself." Those words touched something deep inside him. For the first time in weeks, he felt seen, not as a provider, not as the strong son who would always manage, but as a human being with dreams, pain, and worth of his own. Slowly, the gossip around the community began to draw a clearer picture. People started to realize this was not just about stolen money. No, it was about respect, about dignity, about a young man who had given everything to his family, only to be treated like a machine with no feelings. It was about a son who wanted to be valued as more than just the one who sacrificed. Some neighbors began to speak openly. How could parents do that to their child? An old woman asked at the market. To take his sweat, his future, for one daughter's enjoyment. That is not parenting, that is greed. Others nodded, remembering how often Tund had been seen working late into the night, pushing himself beyond limits, never complaining. Amara, once celebrated as the family's jewel, now faced whispers behind her back. Where people used to praise her beauty and talent, they now muttered about selfishness and pride. The Europe trip that was supposed to lift her higher had instead cast a shadow over her reputation. Meanwhile, Tund, though carrying the heavy weight of betrayal, began to receive quiet nods of respect. People saw the courage it took to confront not just his parents, but the very culture of silence that had always favored obedience over truth. Every word of support reminded Tund that he was not crazy for feeling wronged, that he had the right to stand up for himself. And though many still judged him, he started to realize something important. This was no longer about pleasing everyone. It was about reclaiming his worth, about refusing to let anyone, family or not, reduce him to nothing more than a wallet. In the end, the scandal became more than just a family fight. It became a lesson to the community. Respect cannot be stolen, love cannot be one-sided, and no child, no matter how strong, deserves to be used until they break. Weeks passed before Amara returned from Europe. She walked into the neighborhood with her usual confidence, holding shopping bags, showing off her designer clothes, and scrolling through her phone to display the beautiful pictures she had taken in Paris, Rome, and Madrid. She expected the usual applause, the admiration, the praise. In her mind, she was still the golden child, the one everyone envied. But this time things were different. Instead of cheers, there were whispers. Instead of smiles, there were cold stares. People looked at her, not with admiration, but with quiet judgment. Children giggled behind her back, women in the market shook their heads, and men muttered to each other. She didn't understand at first, until she overheard the elders. "How could your parents do such a thing?" one elder asked loudly at a gathering. "Steal from their own son just to send a daughter abroad. That is shameful." Another elder added, "We respected this family, but this act has stained their name." Amara's parents sat silently, unable to defend themselves. Their once proud shoulders now sagged under the weight of community disapproval. The neighbors who used to admire them now avoided their eyes. Respect, once freely given, had turned into suspicion and scorn. For the first time, Amara felt her charm slipping away. No one wanted to hear about her trip, her paintings, or her adventures. When she showed pictures on her phone, people glanced quickly and turned away. Where she once felt like a queen, now she felt like an outsider carrying a mark of disgrace. Meanwhile, Tund was quietly building a new chapter of his life. With no family support, he walked into a local microfinance office and applied for a small loan. The process wasn't easy, but he refused to give up. He presented his business idea with trembling hands but steady eyes. The manager, impressed by his determination, approved a modest amount to get him started. Tund used that money carefully. He bought equipment, rented a small shop, and began working toward his dream of opening a delivery and logistics business. Every day he poured his heart into it, this time not for his family's approval, not for their praise but for himself. Word spread quickly. People in the community noticed Tund's resilience. They whispered, "After all they did to him, he still rises. That young man has courage." Some even started supporting his business, choosing him over bigger companies because they respected his struggle. The tables had turned. Amara, once adored, now walked in the shadow of shame, while Tund, once overlooked, began to earn quiet respect. He didn't gloat, he didn't show off, he simply worked, letting his actions speak. And deep inside, for the first time in a long while, he felt a small spark of hope. The betrayal had nearly destroyed him, but it had also awakened him. And now, while Amara faced the cold reality of a tarnished name, Tund was slowly, steadily, building a future that no one could steal. The day of the family gathering arrived. The house was full of relatives, neighbors, and elders. Everyone had been waiting to see how Tund would face his parents after all the drama. He walked in quietly, but there was a strength in his steps that no one had seen before. He was no longer the silent son in the shadows. He was a man who had faced betrayal and survived it. When the room grew still, Tund stood tall and looked his parents directly in the eyes. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "You took from me what no parent should ever take. You stole not just my money but my trust. But listen carefully, you did not break me. I will rise without you, and I will never let your betrayal define my worth." The room froze. His father lowered his head. His mother's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Amara shifted uncomfortably, for once without words. Tund didn't wait for apologies, excuses, or pity. He had already made peace within himself. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving the room in complete silence. The weight of his statement lingered in the air long after he was gone. In the days that followed, the story spread across Ibadan. People no longer talked about Amara's Europe trip. They talked about Tund, the son who stood against betrayal, the man who refused to be broken, the one who found strength where others expected him to fall. And from that day on, his name was not tied to debt or pity, but to dignity, courage, and a strength that could not be stolen.